You don't need a crisis to feel it. You can feel it in a grain bin that's full and still doesn't pay the bills. You can feel it when crop prices slide, but fertilizer and fuel refuse to follow. You can feel it when the headlines say farm income near record highs. And the people who actually farm say, then why does it feel like we're drowning? Here is the uncomfortable truth. American agriculture is not one story right now. It's two stories colliding. One side squeezed on cash, one side riding strong margins, and Washington is trying to treat both with the same bandage. If you want analysis like this, fast, clear, and no fluff, subscribe now. Because what happens next won't stay on the farm. Now let me show you the real problem we're not saying out loud. It starts with a disconnect that keeps getting wider. The problem isn't that people are lying. It's that they're talking about different realities. On paper, US farm income looks solid. Projected income for 2025 sits near nominal record highs. Land values keep rising. Credit still flows. Defaults stay low. If you stop there, the story sounds reassuring. But that surface hides what's happening underneath, because aggregate numbers blur pain. They average winners and losers into a calm line. Row crop farmers see prices falling year after year since the post-2022 peak. At the same time, their costs, energy, fertilizer, inputs never really came down. Margins shrink, cash tightens. That pressure is real. Meanwhile, livestock and dairy tell a different story. Feed is cheap, meat and dairy prices are high. Margins expand. Income looks strong. Same sector. Two outcomes, one policy lens. And when government support enters the picture, the confusion deepens because assistance lifts totals without fixing the imbalance. To understand how we got here, we have to step back before today's numbers, back into the forces that quietly set this in motion. What you're seeing today didn't begin today. It began when prices spiked and then fell unevenly. After 2022, global commodity prices rolled over. Corn, wheat, soybeans lost altitude fast, but the costs of producing them didn't follow the same path. Energy stayed expensive. Fertilizer stayed sticky. Labor didn't get cheaper. That broke the old rhythm of farming. Historically, high prices cooled costs. Low prices forced costs down. This time, the cycle cracked. At the same moment, trade became a stress test. Tariffs didn't just hit balance sheets. They reshaped incentives. They redirected flows. They trained buyers to look elsewhere. Exports stopped being a growth engine. They became collateral damage. Short-term prices fell. Long-term market share slipped. And while government payments rushed in to stabilize the system, they masked the structural shift underneath. Income looked healthy. Cash reality didn't. This is how quiet pressure builds. Not from one shock, but from misaligned cycles stacking on top of each other. And then something breaks. Then came the first rupture, not a collapse, a shock. Trade retaliation hit fast, and agriculture took the blow first. When counter tariffs landed, prices reacted immediately. Soybeans dropped, sorghum followed. Meat, cotton, specialty crops felt it next. This wasn't abstract. You could watch it on a screen. Markets repriced risk in real time. For producers, the damage wasn't just lost sales. It was lost leverage. A major buyer stepped back, and suddenly supply had nowhere to go. The short-term cost showed up as lower prices. But the deeper cost was strategic, because competitors didn't wait. They filled the gap. They scaled up. They stayed. This is why emergency aid appeared. $12 billion, talk of $10 billion more. A financial tourniquet to stop the bleeding. If you want to understand power, follow moments like this. Policy doesn't fail loudly. It fails quietly, then demands rescue. But bailouts don't answer the hardest question. They delay it. And the real question is this: what kind of system produces the same crisis again? That answer lives beneath the surface. The system didn't break by accident. It worked exactly as designed. Here's the mechanism hiding in plain sight. US agriculture is tied to global markets. But global markets run on trust, not sympathy. Buyers don't wait for politics to settle. They adapt. When tariffs cut access, trade flows reroute. Exports don't pause. They move. Brazil didn't steal market share. It absorbed it. Production expanded. Infrastructure adjusted. Supply chains locked in new habits. And once those habits form, they don't reverse easily. At home, support payments soften the blow. $35 billion in a single year. More queued behind it. Enough to keep balance sheets standing. But here's the catch. Aid stabilizes income. It does not restore competitiveness. It props up the present while the future quietly shifts elsewhere. So you end up with a system that looks stable, feels unstable, and grows more dependent over time. That's the trap. Because the longer support replaces markets, the harder it becomes to rebuild credibility abroad. And just as that pressure builds, another fault line opens. This time, it's not about crops. It's about who's winning and who isn't. The second shock is quieter, but it cuts deeper because while crop farmers struggle on cash, livestock and dairy move in the opposite direction. Feed is cheap, corn and soy prices are low, input costs fall where they matter most. At the same time, meat and dairy prices stay high. Supplies are tight. Demand holds. Margins expand. So when policymakers look at the farm sector, they see strength. When crop farmers look at their books, they see stress. This is how misalignment turns political. Because support programs don't target margins. They target categories. And categories don't reflect reality anymore. The result is tension inside agriculture itself. One side asking for help to survive, another quietly doing very well, and the numbers allow both stories to coexist. Farm bankruptcies rise but stay small. Debt ratios look manageable. Land values keep climbing. From a distance, nothing seems urgent. Up close, pressure builds month by month. This is how systems drift, not through collapse, through uneven strain, and when strain lasts long enough, it stops being economic. It becomes personal. That's when you feel it most clearly. This is where it reaches you. Not as a chart, not as a policy memo, but as a decision you didn't want to make. You feel it when land prices climb faster than anything you can earn from the land itself. When buying becomes impossible and leasing becomes permanent. When passing a farm to your kids turns from a plan into a question. You feel it when absentee owners outbid producers. When land stops being valued for what it grows and starts being valued for what it can be flipped into. You feel it when food costs don't come back down. When eating out becomes rare. When groceries take a bigger share of every paycheck. And you feel it most when the system tells you overall things are fine, while your margin says otherwise. This is not failure. This is strain. If this resonates, stay with me. Subscribe. Because what looks like an agricultural issue is quietly becoming a social one. And it doesn't stop at the farm gate. It spreads outward. What starts on the farm doesn't stay there. Because agriculture sits at the base of the global system, when it shifts, everything above it moves. Trade wars don't just change who sells soybeans. They redraw alliances. They reroute supply chains. They create winners who didn't exist before. When one market closes, exports flood into another. Third countries feel the pressure. They respond with barriers of their own. Protection spreads. History has seen this before. Trade fragmentation doesn't arrive as a headline. It arrives as a pattern. At the same time, uncertainty becomes a tax. Ports hesitate. Carriers adjust routes. Logistics costs rise quietly. Even cities feel it. Food inflation sticks. Restaurants raise prices. Households adapt downward. And while the system absorbs the shock, credibility erodes. Because global buyers don't ask who's right. They ask who's reliable. If the US becomes unpredictable, others will diversify away permanently. This is the real risk. Not one bad year, but a slow loss of centrality. And that brings us to the future. Not one future, three. The future breaks three ways. First, the best case path. Trade stabilizes, markets reopen, the US rebuilds its reputation as a reliable supplier. Prices don't return to the highs of 2022, but margins normalize. Support fades back into the background. Exports grow again, not because of aid, but because of trust. Second, the middle path, uncertainty lingers. Tariffs come and go, government payments become routine, farm income stays afloat, but only with constant intervention. Competitiveness erodes slowly. You don't feel a collapse, you feel dependence. Third, the worst case path. Trade wars spread, retaliation multiplies, buyers lock in alternatives, market share loss becomes permanent. Aid expands just to hold the line. Land values stay high, entry becomes impossible, and farming turns into an inherited privilege, not a profession. Here's the uncomfortable insight. None of these futures are decided by yields alone. They're decided by policy credibility, by whether markets believe commitments will hold, by whether the system rewards production or compensates for its absence. The future isn't waiting. It's forming right now. And that leaves one final question. What do we do with what we know? Here's the insight we have to sit with. Agriculture doesn't fail when yields fall. It fails when signals break, when prices stop reflecting reality, when aid replaces markets, when reliability becomes optional. Right now, US agriculture is being held together by support, not strengthened by strategy. That can work for a season. It cannot work for a generation because the world is watching patterns, not promises. Buyers remember who showed up, who stayed predictable, who didn't turn food into leverage. If this system is going to endure, it won't be because we paid more to survive. It will be because we chose credibility over comfort. And for you watching this unfold, the takeaway is simple. Don't just ask whether farmers are being helped. Ask whether the system is being fixed.